The transport ship landed on Kepler Station with a soft thud. Katie Brooks pressed her face against a small window and stared at the massive space station spinning slowly in the darkness. She had never seen anything so big in her life. Back home in Montana, the biggest building she knew was a grain elevator in town. This place looked like it could hold 1,000 grain elevators. All new cadets report to Base 7, announced a voice over the ship's speakers. Katie grabbed her small bag and followed the other passengers down the ramp. The air smelled different here. Clean and cold, like the air after a snowstorm back home, but without the bite of winter wind. The other cadets looked nothing like her. There was a tall blue creature with 4 arms walking on legs that bent backward. Another being seemed to be made of living crystal, sparkling under the station's lights. A bug-like creature clicked and buzzed as it talked to what looked like a walking tree covered in flowers. Katie felt very small and very human. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," boomed a voice that made Katie jump. The speaker was the blue 4-armed creature she had seen earlier, but much bigger. He wore a uniform covered in strange symbols and medals. "I am Commander Zextai, your weapons instructor. You will learn to fight. You will learn to protect the galaxy. Most of you will survive the training." The commander's 4 eyes looked over the group of new cadets. Katie counted 12 different types of beings. She was the only human. "Each of you will receive weapons suited to your species." Commander Zextai continued. "We have studied your people. We know your strengths. We know your weaknesses. Your weapons will match your abilities." One by one, the commander called out names and species. The crystal being, called Silthera, received a weapon that hummed with energy and seemed to sing when she touched it. The bug creature, Click 7, got a weapon that fired so fast it sounded like rain on a metal roof. The tree person, Sagebloom, was given something that looked more like a garden hose than a gun, but it glowed with soft green light. Katie Brooks, human, called the commander. Katie stepped forward. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. All the other cadets turned to look at her. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. Commander Zextai handed her something that made her heart stop. It was a rifle, not a space rifle or an energy weapon or anything that hummed or glowed or sang. It was a wooden rifle. The stock was made of dark wood that had been worn smooth by many hands. The metal parts were simple iron and steel. It had a bolt that she would have to work by hand after each shot. There were simple iron sights, the kind her grandfather had taught her to use when she was 8 years old. "This is your weapon," said Commander Zextai. "It matches your species' level of combat development." Some of the other cadets made sounds that Katie thought might be laughing. The crystal being's song turned into what sounded like musical giggles. Even the tree person's flowers seemed to rustle with amusement. Katie took the rifle in her hands. The wood felt warm and familiar. She had held rifles like this before, many times. This one was old, maybe older than her grandfather, but it was well made. She could tell by the way it balanced in her hands. Someone had loved this rifle and taken care of it for a long time. "Ma'am," Katie said, looking up at the commander, "when do we start shooting?" Commander Zextai's 4 eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. "Tomorrow, cadet. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we see what you can do." The cadets were led to their quarters. Katie's room was small but clean. It had a bed, a desk, and a small window that looked out into space. She could see stars everywhere, more stars than she had ever seen from her family's ranch. She sat on the bed and held the wooden rifle across her knees. Her fingers found a grain in the wood, following the lines that nature had made decades ago. The rifle reminded her of home. It reminded her of early mornings with her grandfather, walking through the woods before dawn. It reminded her of the way he taught her to breathe, to be still, to become part of the rifle and the target and everything in between. "Every shot matters, Katie girl," her grandfather had always said. "Don't waste ammunition. Don't waste time. Make every shot count." A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a man in a different uniform than Commander Zextai. He was human, but older, with gray hair and lines around his eyes. "I'm Marcus Cole," he said. "I'm here as a military observer for Earth. Mind if I come in?" Katie stepped aside to let him enter. Marcus looked at the rifle in her hands and smiled. "That's a beautiful weapon," he said. "May I?" Katie handed him the rifle. Marcus held it like he knew what he was doing. He worked the bolt action, checked the sights, and felt the balance. "This is a classic," he said. "Probably made more than a century ago. Someone took very good care of it." He handed it back to her. "Do you know how to use it?" "Yes, sir," Katie said. "My grandfather taught me. We used to hunt together back home." Marcus nodded. "The other species think we're primitive because we still use weapons like this. They think they're energy weapons, and smart guns make them better fighters." "Are they right?" Katie asked. Marcus smiled. "Tomorrow you'll show them. But Katie, I want you to know something. That rifle in your hands has probably won more battles and fed more families than all their fancy weapons combined. Your grandfather was smart to teach you the old ways." After Marcus left, Katie cleaned the rifle even though it was already clean. She checked every part, every screw, every piece of metal and wood. Then she lay down on the narrow bed and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow she would show them what a human with a wooden rifle could do. She thought about her grandfather's words and felt calm. Every shot would matter. She would make every shot count. In the distance, she could hear the other cadets talking and laughing. Their voices sounded excited and nervous. Katie wasn't nervous. She was ready. The shooting range was bigger than Katie's entire hometown. It stretched out for 3 kilometers in every direction, with targets at different distances and heights. Some targets moved on tracks. Others popped up and down like prairie dogs. The range had sections that looked like different worlds. One area was covered in fake snow. Another had red sand like Mars. And one section was filled with thick fog that swirled around metal barriers. Katie walked behind the other cadets, carrying her wooden rifle. The other weapons hummed and beeped and made sounds she had never heard before. Click 7's rapid-fire weapon clicked and buzzed even when it wasn't shooting. Silthara's crystal weapon sang a high, sweet note that hurt Katie's ears. The weapon belonging to Thrumbbolder, a massive rock-like being, was so big that Katie couldn't have lifted it with both hands. "Form a line at the first firing position," commanded Commander Zextai. His 4 arms pointed in different directions as he organized cadets. "Today we test your basic skills. Targets at 500 meters. Each cadet will fire 10 rounds. Hit the target, pass the test. Miss the target, clean the latrines for a week." Marcus Cole stood off to one side, watching. He had a small device in his hand that Katie guessed was for taking notes. He caught her eye and gave her a small nod. The first cadet to shoot was Warrior Prime Kexlon, a Heliosan like Commander Zextai, but younger and more eager to prove himself. His weapon looked like it was made of liquid metal that shifted and changed shape as he held it. When he aimed, holographic displays appeared in the air around him, showing wind, speed, distance, and target information. Kexlon fired 10 shots in rapid succession. His weapon made a sound like thunder mixed with music. The target, a simple black circle on white background, showed 8 hits out of 10. The misses were close to the center. "Acceptable," said Commander Zextai. The other cadets took their turns. Click 7 fired so fast that his 10 shots sounded like one long buzz. He hit the target 9 times. Silthara's crystal weapon created beams of pure light that seemed to bend around obstacles. She hit 10 out of 10, but her shots were scattered all over the target. Unit 47, a robot-like being made of chrome and cables, connected directly to his weapon with wires that came out his fingers. His weapon aimed itself while he stood perfectly still. 10 shots, 10 hits, all in the exact center of the target. "Show off," muttered Thrumbbolder, whose rocky voice sounded like grinding stone. When it was Thrumbbolder's turn, his massive cannon weapon shook the ground when it fired. Each shot left a hole in the target big enough for Katie to put her fist through. He hit 8 out of 10 targets, but Katie thought it was because his shots were so big that they couldn't miss. Then it was Katie's turn. She walked to the firing line with her wooden rifle and the small pouch of ammunition that Commander Zextai had given her. The bullets were simple metal, not the glowing energy or smart projectiles that the others used. She could hear some of the cadets behind her making sounds that she thought might be their version of snickering. Katie looked down the range at the target 500 meters away. It looked very small, but she had shot prairie dogs at 600 meters back home, and prairie dogs were a lot smaller than this target. She knelt down and rested her left elbow on her left knee, just like her grandfather had taught her. The position felt natural and solid. She could hear the other cadets moving behind her, probably getting a better look at the primitive human with her ancient weapon. Katie loaded one bullet into the chamber and worked the bolt. The action was smooth and quiet compared to the electronic sounds of the other weapons. She raised the rifle to her shoulder and looked through the iron sights. The target was clear and sharp in her vision. She could see the black circle in the center, the white background around it, even the small scratches and marks from previous shooters. She took a breath, let half of it out, and held the rest. Time seemed to slow down. She could feel her heartbeat, steady and calm. She could feel the rifle stock against her cheek, warm from her skin. She could feel the trigger under her finger, smooth and ready. She squeezed the trigger slowly, just like her grandfather had taught her. The rifle cracked, sharp and clean. The sound echoed across the range. The target showed a hole in the exact center of the black circle. Commander Zextai's 4 eyes all focused on the target display. "Hit," he said, but his voice sounded surprised. Katie worked the bolt, ejecting the empty case and loading a fresh bullet. She aimed again, breathed again, squeezed again. Another hole appeared in the center of the target, so close to the first one that they almost touched. By her 5th shot, the other cadets had stopped making noise. By her 7th shot, even Commander Zextai was paying full attention. By her 10th shot, everyone on the range was watching Katie Brooks, the human with the wooden rifle. All 10 shots had hit the target. Not just hit it, but hit it in the center. Not just in the center, but in almost exactly the same spot. The holes were so close together that they looked like one big hole with ragged edges. Katie stood up and lowered her rifle. She worked the bolt one more time to make sure the chamber was empty, just like her grandfather had taught her. Safety first. Always. The range was completely quiet. Even the electronic sounds from the other weapons seemed to have stopped. "Perfect score," said Commander Zextai. His voice was flat, like he couldn't believe what he had just seen. Click 7 buzzed something in his own language. Unit 47's mechanical head turned to look at Katie with optical sensors at word and clicked. Silthara's crystal body changed color from blue to purple to green, which Katie guessed meant something important in crystal being language. Marcus Cole was writing furiously on his device, but he was smiling. "How?" asked Warrior Prime Kexlon. "How did you do that with such a primitive weapon?" Katie looked at him, then at all the other cadets staring at her. She thought about her grandfather's words. "Don't brag, Katie girl. Let your shooting do the talking." "I practiced," she said simply. Commander Zextai studied her for a long moment with all 4 of his eyes. "Tomorrow we move to more difficult targets. Moving targets at various ranges. Environmental conditions. Time pressure." He paused and looked at Katie's rifle. "Bring more ammunition. Human Katie Brooks. Tomorrow we see if this was luck or skill." Katie nodded. "Yes, sir." As they walked back to the barracks, Katie could feel the other cadets looking at her differently, not with amusement anymore, but with something that might have been curiosity, or maybe respect. She thought about calling her grandfather that night, but the communication costs to Earth were expensive. Instead, she cleaned her rifle and prepared for tomorrow. She had a feeling that the real test was just beginning. The second day brought new challenges that made Katie's perfect score seem like child's play. Commander Zextai led them to a different part of the range, where the targets moved fast and the environment changed every few minutes. Artificial weather systems created wind, rain, snow, and sandstorms. The lighting shifted from bright daylight to complete darkness and back again. "Combat is not clean," Commander Zextai announced to cadets. "The enemy will not stand still. The weather will not cooperate. Your equipment will fail. You must adapt or die." Katie looked at the course ahead of them. Targets zipped along tracks at different speeds and heights. Some appeared for only a few seconds before disappearing behind barriers. Others moved in patterns that seemed random but probably weren't. The whole area was filled with obstacles, fake buildings, and places where an enemy might hide. Each cadet will complete the course individually, the commander continued. You have 20 minutes. You have 30 rounds of ammunition. Score 70% or better to pass. Anything less, and you repeat basic training. Warrior Prime Kexlon went first. His liquid metal weapon changed shape as he moved through the course, becoming a sniper rifle for long shots and a rapid-fire weapon for close targets. His holographic displays flickered and adjusted constantly, compensating for wind and lighting changes. He moved quickly and professionally, his 4 arms working in perfect coordination. When the course ended, Kexlon had hit 23 out of 30 targets. 77%. A solid pass. Acceptable, said Commander Zextai, but Katie could tell he was pleased. Click 7 went next. His bug-like compound eyes could track multiple targets at once, and his rapid-fire weapon filled the air with a constant buzzing sound. But the weather systems gave him trouble. When artificial rain started falling, his targeting system couldn't handle the water droplets. When the lights went dark, his weapon's energy signature made him an easy target for the course's defensive systems, which fired harmless but annoying paint rounds at cadets who exposed themselves too much. Click 7 finished with 19 hits. 63%. A failure. Unacceptable, said Commander Zextai. You rely too much on your weapon systems. Learn to shoot with your eyes, not your computers. One by one, the other cadets attempted the course. Silthara's crystal weapon performed beautifully in bright light, but became almost useless in darkness. Unit 47's perfect mechanical precision was confused by targets that moved in truly random patterns. Thrumboulder's massive cannon couldn't track fast-moving targets at all. Most of the cadets scored between 60 and 75%. A few failed completely. Katie watched them all, learning from their mistakes and successes. She noticed that the cadets who did best were the ones who trusted their own skills more than their weapons technology. Katie Brooks called Commander Zextai. Your turn. Katie walked to the starting line with her wooden rifle and her pouch of simple ammunition. The other cadets gathered to watch. Word spread through the academy about the human who had shot a perfect score with a primitive weapon. Even some instructors had come to see what she could do. Marcus Cole stood nearby with several other human observers. Katie recognized Lieutenant Ryan Hayes, who had arrived that morning from Earth's military headquarters. They were all taking notes and recording everything. Katie looked down the course and tried to understand the patterns. The targets moved fast, but they weren't completely random. There was a rhythm to them, like the rhythm of wind through trees or the way deer moved through a forest when they thought no one was watching. Begin, said Commander Zextai. Katie moved into the course at a steady walking pace. She didn't run like most of the other cadets had. Running made it harder to aim, and accuracy was more important than speed. The first target appeared to her left, moving fast across an open area. Katie raised her rifle, tracked the target's movement, and fired. The target stopped moving. Hit! She worked the bolt action and loaded another round while walking toward the next position. The artificial wind picked up, blowing sand across the course. Katie felt the wind on her face and adjusted her aim without thinking about it. Her grandfather had taught her to shoot in Montana wind, and this felt similar. A target popped up from behind a barrier, stayed visible for 3 seconds, then dropped down again. Katie was ready for it. She had watched the other cadets and noticed the pattern. She aimed at the spot where the target would appear, waited, and fired the moment it showed itself. Another hit. The course threw everything at her. Targets that moved in zigzag patterns. Targets that appeared in darkness for only 1 second. Targets that were partially hidden behind cover. Targets that moved so fast they were just blurs. Katie hit them all. The other cadets stopped talking among themselves and watched in silence. Commander Zextai's 4 eyes followed Katie's every movement. Even the recording devices seemed to focus on her with mechanical intensity. Halfway through the course, it started raining. Real rain, not just the artificial mist from earlier. Katie's wooden rifle stock became slippery in her hands. The iron sights collected water droplets that made aiming difficult. Katie wiped the sights with her sleeve and kept shooting. She had hunted in rain before. She knew how water changed the way bullets flew, how it affected visibility, how it made everything more difficult. A target appeared at the far end of the course, almost at the maximum range. It was moving erratically, bouncing up and down as well as side to side. Several of the other cadets had missed this target completely. Katie knelt down and steadied her rifle against a barrier. She watched the target's movement, looking for the pattern within the chaos. Everything had a pattern if you looked long enough and hard enough. There, she could see it now. The target's seemingly random movement was actually following a complex but predictable path. Katie led the target, estimating where it would be when her bullet arrived, and squeezed the trigger. The target stopped moving. Another hit. Near the end of the course, Katie faced something none of the other cadets had attempted. A target was hidden completely behind a metal barrier, but there was a small gap at one end. The target moved back and forth behind the barrier, and Katie could only see it for a fraction of a second as it passed the gap. Katie studied the situation. She could hear the target moving behind the barrier, even if she couldn't see it most of the time. The sound told her where it was and how fast it was moving. She aimed at the gap and waited. When she heard the target approaching, she began her trigger squeeze. The target appeared in the gap just as the rifle fired. The bullet caught it perfectly. Another hit. When Katie finished the course, the range was completely silent, except for the artificial rain still falling from the weather system. She stood at the finish line with her empty rifle, water dripping from her hair and uniform. Commander Zextai looked at the scoring display. His 4 eyes blinked several times. 30 targets. 30 hits. 100%. The silence stretched on for several seconds. Then Click 7 began making a sound that Katie realized was applause in his species' way. Silthara's crystal body flashed with bright colors. Even Unit 47's mechanical parts whirred in what might have been approval. Lieutenant Ryan Hayes walked over to Katie, his recording device still active. "That was impossible," he said quietly. "Some of those shots were impossible." Katie worked the bolt on her empty rifle and slung it over her shoulder. "My grandfather always said that impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet." Commander Zextai approached her, all 4 of his eyes focused on her face. "Tomorrow we increase the difficulty," he said. "Longer ranges, worse conditions, more complex targets." Katie nodded. "Yes, sir." As they walked back to barracks, Katie could feel something had changed. The other cadets no longer looked at her with amusement or curiosity. There was respect in their strange faces now, and maybe something else. Maybe a little bit of fear. Katie didn't mind. Her grandfather had taught her that respect was something you earned one shot at a time. The third day started differently. Katie woke to find a formal challenge document slipped under her door during the night. It was written in 3 languages: Basic Galactic, Heliosan script, and English. The message was simple but serious. Katie Brooks, human cadet. I, Warrior Prime Kexlon of the Heliosan military caste, formally challenge you to single combat testing of marksmanship skills. The honor of my people demands this test. You will accept or be known throughout the galaxy as a coward who hides behind luck. Katie read the challenge twice, while sipping coffee from the small heating unit in her room. Back home, if someone called you a coward, you either prove them wrong or live with the shame. She figured the same rules probably applied in space. She dressed quickly and found Commander Zextai in the Academy's main hall. Several other instructors stood with him, including some species Katie hadn't seen before. Word of the challenge had spread quickly. "You received Warrior Prime Kexlon's formal challenge," Commander Zextai said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. You understand that accepting means facing our most difficult shooting course? The Nightmare Range has never been completed with a perfect score. Most cadets are happy to achieve 50%. Katie thought about her grandfather's words about backing down from a challenge. "I understand, sir. And you wish to accept? With your primitive weapon against the Academy's most advanced smart rifle system." "Yes, sir." Commander Zextai's 4 eyes studied her carefully. "Very well. This afternoon, the entire Academy will observe." The news spread through Kepler Station like wildfire. By lunchtime, Katie heard that betting pools had started among the cadets, instructors, and even the station's civilian workers. The odds were not in her favor. Marcus Cole found her in the dining hall, where she was eating alone. Most of the other cadets were too nervous or excited to sit near her. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said quietly. Kexlon is a top shooter in his class. His weapon is worth more than most starships. "What kind of weapon?" Katie asked. Marcus activated his personal display and showed her a rotating image of a sleek, organic-looking rifle that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. The Helios and Mark 7 Smart Rifle. It has its own artificial intelligence, environmental compensation systems, and can actually bend its projectiles in flight to hit targets around corners. The aiming system connects directly to the shooter's nervous system. Essentially, you just think about hitting a target, and the weapon does everything else. Katie studied the image. The weapon looked alien and intimidating, like something from a nightmare about the future. Does it need ammunition? Energy cells. Each cell provides about 1,000 shots. The weapon can adjust the power and type of each shot based on the target. Katie nodded and continued eating her lunch. It tasted like chicken, but was probably made from some kind of space protein that had never seen Earth. "Katie, this weapon makes shooting almost automatic. Kexlon just has to point it in the general direction of a target. Does it make him a better shooter?" Katie asked. Marcus paused, thinking about the question. "It makes him more accurate, more effective, more deadly. Whether that makes him a better shooter." He shrugged. "I guess that's what we'll find out." That afternoon, the entire academy gathered at the Nightmare Range. Katie had never seen so many different species in one place. There were beings that looked like walking plants, others that seemed to be made of pure energy, and some that appeared to be collections of floating geometric shapes. They all had one thing in common. They were here to watch the human with the wooden rifle face, the most advanced weapon in the galaxy. The Nightmare Range lived up to its name. It stretched for 2 full kilometers and included every type of difficult shooting scenario Katie could imagine, plus several she couldn't. Targets appeared and disappeared in microseconds. Some moved in 3 dimensions, flying through the air or popping up from underground. Others were partially hidden or required ricocheting bullets off angled surfaces to hit. The environmental systems were set to maximum difficulty. Gravity shifted randomly from heavy to light. Artificial weather created everything from blizzards to sandstorms to electromagnetic storms that interfered with electronic systems. The lighting changed constantly, from blazing brightness to complete darkness. "This course is 50 targets," announced Commander Zextai to the gathered crowd. "Each shooter will have exactly 50 rounds of ammunition. Time limit is 30 minutes. Highest score wins." Kexlon stepped forward first. His smart rifle flowed and shifted in his 4 hands like it was alive. When he connected to it through neural interface ports in his skull, the weapon's surface rippled with energy patterns. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing target probabilities, environmental data, and tactical analysis. "Begin," said Commander Zextai. Kexlon moved through the course like a dancer. His weapon aimed itself while he focused on tactical movement. When targets appeared, the rifle fired automatically, its AI calculating impossible shots faster than any organic mind could think. He hit targets around corners by bouncing projectiles off metal surfaces. He hit flying targets by predicting their movement patterns 3 seconds into the future. He hit targets in complete darkness by using infrared and electromagnetic sensing. The weapon did most of the work, but Kexlon's movements were smooth and professional. He had trained with this system for years, and the partnership between shooter and smart weapon was impressive to watch. When he finished, the scoreboard showed 43 hits out of 50 targets. 86%, the best score anyone had ever achieved on the Nightmare Range. The crowd made sounds that Katie interpreted as amazed approval. Several beings applauded in their various ways. Commander Zextai nodded with what appeared to be satisfaction. "Excellent performance, Warrior Prime Kexlon," the commander announced. "A new academy record." Kexlon's weapon disconnected from his neural interface and returned to its neutral form. He looked confident and pleased as he stepped aside. Katie Brooks called Commander Zextai. Katie walked to the starting line. She carried her wooden rifle and a small pouch containing exactly 50 bullets. No holographic displays. No environmental sensors. No artificial intelligence. just wood, metal, and the skills her grandfather had taught her on cold mornings in Montana. The crowd fell silent. Katie could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her. She thought she could hear the betting odds changing as people saw her primitive weapon compared to Kexlon's technological masterpiece. Lieutenant Ryan Hayes stood with several other Earth military observers. They all looked nervous. Marcus Cole gave her an encouraging nod. Katie looked down the nightmare range and tried to understand what she was facing. 50 targets in 30 minutes. Environmental chaos. Moving, hiding, flying targets that appeared for fractions of seconds. She thought about her grandfather's advice. Don't think about the hard shots, Katie girl. Just take them one at a time. Every shot is just one shot. Begin, said Commander Zextai. Katie started walking down the range at a steady pace. The first target appeared immediately, a standard silhouette at 800 meters, visible for 2 seconds before disappearing. Katie raised her rifle, found the target in her iron sights, and fired. The wooden stock kicked against her shoulder with familiar authority. The target fell. She worked a bolt action, ejected the empty case, and loaded a fresh round. The sound of mechanical action seemed loud compared to the silent efficiency of Kexlon's smart weapon. The artificial weather system activated, creating a windstorm that filled the air with dust and debris. Katie felt the wind strength and direction on her face and arms. Her grandfather had taught her to read wind like other people read books. The second target popped up from an underground position, stayed visible for 1 second, then disappeared. Katie had been ready for it. She had watched Kexlon's run and memorized the timing patterns. Hit number 2. As she moved through the course, Katie began to understand that her wooden rifle had advantages that Kexlon's smart weapon didn't. It worked the same way in any environment. It didn't need electronic systems that could be jammed or confused. It didn't rely on power cells that could run low. Most importantly, it forced Katie to really see every shot, to understand every target, to become part of the entire shooting process in a way that no automatic system could match. The crowd watched in growing amazement as Katie systematically worked through targets that should have been impossible for anyone using such primitive equipment. She hit targets in complete darkness by listening for the sound of their movement. She ricocheted bullets off angled surfaces with calculations she did in her head, not with computers. When she finished the course, Katie stood at the final position with her rifle empty and her ammunition pouch empty. She had fired all 50 rounds in 28 minutes. The range fell silent as everyone waited for the final score. Commander Zextai looked at the scoreboard, then looked again. His 4 eyes blinked several times. 50 targets, 50 hits, 100%. Perfect score. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then the entire academy exploded in sounds that Katie interpreted as amazed disbelief. Even the beings who bet against her seemed more impressed than upset. Kexlon stared at the scoreboard, then at Katie, then at her wooden rifle. His smart weapon seemed to dim in his hands. "Impossible," he said quietly. Katie walked over to him and extended her hand in the traditional human gesture of sportsmanship. "You shot very well," she said. "Your weapon is impressive." Kexlon looked at her hand, then at her face. Slowly, he reached out with one of his 4 hands and shook hers. "How?" he asked. "How did you do that?" Katie thought about her grandfather's words, about cold mornings and patient practice, about learning to become one with a rifle and the target. "I had a good teacher," she said simply. The academy's main auditorium had never been so quiet. Every seat was filled with cadets, instructors, and observers from dozens of species. They had all come to hear how a human with a wooden rifle had achieved what no one in the academy's history had ever done before. A perfect score on the Nightmare Range. Katie sat on the stage next to Commander Zextai, still holding her rifle, though it felt warm and familiar in her hands. A comfort in this room full of alien faces and questioning eyes. To her left sat Warrior Prime Kexlon, his smart weapon powered down and silent. To her right, Lieutenant Ryan Hayes and Marcus Cole represented Earth's military interests. "The challenge is complete," announced Commander Zextai to the crowd. "The results speak for themselves. But the Academy and the galaxy deserves an explanation." He turned to Katie with all 4 of his eyes. "Human Katie Brooks, You have accomplished something that our best weapons and our most advanced technology could not. Some of our people believe you possess secret human military enhancements. Others think your weapon contains hidden technology. Still others whisper about genetic modifications or psychic abilities. Katie looked out at the crowd. She could see curiosity, suspicion, fear, and amazement in faces that belonged to creatures she was still learning to understand. Some among us, Commander Zextai continued, believe that humans are hiding their true military capabilities from the Galactic Alliance. They think your performance was designed to make us underestimate your species. The auditorium buzzed with sounds from different species, clicks, hums, musical tones, and electronic beeps that Katie was beginning to recognize as various forms of agreement or disagreement. Commander Zextai raised one hand for silence. Before rumors spread and diplomatic problems arise, we will have the truth. Explain, Katie Brooks. How did a human with primitive weapons exceed the performance of the galaxy's most advanced military technology? Katie stood up and walked to the center of the stage. She set her rifle down on a table where everyone could see it clearly, though it looked plain and simple under the bright lights, especially compared to the sleek alien weapons displayed around the auditorium. This rifle belonged to my great-great-grandfather, Katie began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium speakers. He used it to hunt deer to feed his family during hard winters more than 150 years ago. My great-grandfather carried it in Earth's Second World War. My grandfather taught me to shoot with it when I was 8 years old. She picked up the rifle and held it so everyone could see the worn wood and simple metal construction. It has no computer, no targeting system, no environmental compensation, no artificial intelligence. It doesn't adjust for wind or calculate bullet drop or predict target movement. It's just wood and metal and simple mechanical parts. Katie worked the bolt action, the mechanical sound echoing through the silent auditorium. When I was growing up on my family's ranch in Montana, we hunted for food, not for sport. Every bullet cost money we didn't have much of. Every shot had to count, because a missed shot meant less meat for winter. My grandfather made me practice every day after school and every weekend for 7 years before he said I was good enough to hunt alone. She looked out at the crowd of alien faces, trying to help them understand something that was completely foreign to their experience. He taught me that shooting isn't about the weapon. It's about understanding distance, wind, movement, and timing. It's about becoming so familiar with your rifle that you don't think about using it. You just use it. It's about patience and practice and doing the same thing correctly thousands of times until it becomes automatic. Dr. Amanda Stevens, the human xenopsychologist, stood up in the audience. If I may add some context, she said, addressing Commander Zextai. Humans developed projectile weapons very early in our evolutionary history. We were persistent hunters who used tools to take down prey much larger and stronger than ourselves. For thousands of years, the difference between eating and starving often came down to making accurate shots with primitive weapons. She activated a holographic display that showed human history, cave paintings of hunters with spears, ancient archers, colonial-era marksmen. While other species developed advanced technology to enhance their natural abilities, humans spent millennia perfecting the fundamentals of marksmanship. We learned to compensate for environmental factors using only our senses and experience. We developed training methods that turned ordinary people into precision shooters. Katie nodded. My grandfather always said that humans had to become their own targeting computers because we didn't have any other choice. Unit 47, the robotic cadet, raised a mechanical arm. Query: your species achieved these results without technological enhancement? That's right, Katie said. Everything I did on the range was just basic marksmanship skills that any human can learn with enough practice. Silthara's crystal body flashed with colors as she spoke in her musical language. The translation came through the auditorium speakers. She asks if all humans possess these abilities. Katie smiled. Not all, but many do. Back home, there are shooting competitions where people regularly hit targets at distances of over 1,000 meters using rifles like this one. Some people are better at it than others, but most humans can learn to shoot accurately if they're willing to practice. Click 7 buzzed a question that translated as, Why do humans still use such primitive weapons when better technology exists? Katie thought about that for a moment, because sometimes simple is better. This rifle will work in any environment, any weather, any situation. It doesn't need power cells or computer updates or technical support. It just needs bullets and someone who knows how to use it. She held up the rifle again. Also, using a rifle like this teaches you things that advanced weapons can't. It makes you understand every shot completely. You learn to read wind and distance and movement with your own eyes and experience instead of relying on sensors and computers. Warrior Prime Kexlon stood up from his chair. I have trained with the galaxy's most advanced weapon systems for 10 years. I scored the highest marks in my class on every test. But you defeated me using equipment that my people would consider museum artifacts. He paused, looking at Katie with what she thought might be respect mixed with frustration. My weapon can make shots that should be impossible. It can calculate trajectories that no organic mind could compute. But today I learned that making a shot and understanding a shot are different things. Commander Zextai nodded slowly. The Academy has always focused on providing cadets with the most advanced weapons available to their species. We assumed that better technology would always produce better results. He looked at Katie's rifle, then at his own advanced sidearm. Perhaps we have been wrong. Dr. Stevens spoke again. Human military philosophy has always emphasized that technology should support the shooter, not replace the shooter's skills. We believe that the person using the weapon is more important than the weapon itself. Marcus Cole stood up in the audience. If I may, Commander, I think this demonstrates something important about human military capabilities. We're not trying to hide advanced technology from the Alliance. We don't have better weapons than what you see here. What we have is better training methods and a culture that values fundamental marksmanship skills. The auditorium buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Katie could sense that the alien observers were processing this information and trying to understand what it meant for their own military training programs. Commander Zextai called for order. This has been most educational. Katie Brooks, you have shown us that advanced technology cannot replace fundamental skills and dedicated practice. Your performance has earned you the highest honors this academy can award. He paused and looked out at the assembled cadets. More importantly, you have taught us all a valuable lesson about the relationship between shooter and weapon. Starting tomorrow, all combat training will include sessions on fundamental marksmanship using simple, non-enhanced weapons. The crowd erupted in surprised sounds. Some seemed pleased, others worried, and a few sounded distinctly unhappy about the prospect of learning to shoot without technological assistance. After the assembly ended, Katie found herself surrounded by instructors and observers asking technical questions about human training methods. Several species requested permission to send representatives to Earth to study human marksmanship programs. Later that evening, Katie sat in her quarters writing a message home. The communication costs were expensive, but she figured her grandfather deserved to know what had happened. "Dear Grandpa Joe," she wrote, "remember that old rifle you taught me to shoot with when I was 8? The one that belonged to your grandfather? Well, I just found out it's the most advanced weapon in the galaxy. Not because of what it can do, but because of what it teaches a person using it. The aliens here are very impressed. But I told them the secret wasn't in the rifle. It was in the teacher who showed me how to use it. I hope you're proud of me. I'm using everything you taught me, and it turns out those lessons are worth more than all the fancy technology in the universe. Love, Katie." She encrypted the message and sent it toward Earth, knowing it would take weeks to arrive. Then she cleaned her rifle one more time and prepared for tomorrow's classes. Word had already spread to the Academy that Katie Brooks would be teaching marksmanship fundamentals to cadets from every species in the Alliance. It was going to be interesting to see how a walking tree person held a rifle, or whether a crystal being could learn to feel wind direction. But Katie figured if her grandfather could teach a stubborn 8-year-old girl from Montana to shoot, she could probably teach anyone who was willing to learn. After all, every shot was just one shot, and everyone had to start somewhere.